In the darkness, whispers become screams, secrets become weapons, and the truth becomes deadly. This is True Crime Mysteries, The Shadow Lens.
What if I told you the most popular sausages in 1863 Porto Alegre weren't pork? What if the butcher shop with lines around the block wasn't selling beef? And what if the city's elite, bishops, police chiefs, wealthy merchants, were unknowingly eating their neighbors? This isn't folklore, this isn't legend. This is the Rua do Arvoredo murders, Brazil's most buried true crime case. And the reason it was buried, because the truth was too stomach-churning to admit. Let me paint you a picture. Porto Alegre, Brazil, 1863. A riverside capital in the wild south of the Brazilian Empire. 20,000 souls, unpaved streets slick with filth, fish oil lanterns flickering in the darkness, spewing black soot and rancid smells. This was a frontier town dressed in the clothes of civilization, immigrants flooding in from Germany, Hungary, Portugal, all chasing the promise of prosperity in the new world. But prosperity has a shadow, and on one particular street, Rua do Arvoredo, that shadow had teeth. The street sat just downhill from the noble quarter, near the cemetery behind the Metropolitan Cathedral. Dark, narrow, a place where questions didn't get asked and people didn't stay long after sunset. Except for the ones who never left at all. José Ramos, who later became the notorious Perfumed monster, was born with violence in his blood. His father, a deserter from the Ragamuffin War who told young José stories about beheading enemies on the battlefield like it was bedtime reading. When José was barely out of boyhood, he watched his drunken father beat his mother senseless. So he grabbed a knife, stabbed him, killed him, self-defense maybe, but something in José enjoyed it. He fled to Porto Alegre, became a police officer. Imagine that, until one day in 1862 when he was caught trying to behead a prisoner in his cell. A man named Domingos José da Costa, a Robin Hood-type folk hero. José claimed the prisoner tried to escape. The truth, José just wanted to feel that power again. After getting kicked off the force, he became a police informant. But José had expensive tastes: opera, poetry, fine clothes. The São Pedro Theater became his second home, where he rubbed elbows with Porto Alegre's high society. He spoke German fluently, he had charm, and he had a ritual. After every murder, José would recite a biblical psalm, eat alone, savoring the moment, shave meticulously, take a long, luxurious bath, dress in the finest, clothes his crimes goodbye, douse himself in cologne, so much cologne people called him the Perfumed monster, order a carriage to the São Pedro Theater. He believed the theater cleansed him, made him artistic, made him legitimate. Psychologically, this is textbook compartmentalization, the ability to commit atrocities and then waltz into polite society without missing a beat. Narcissistic, theatrical, organized. José wasn't killing on impulse, he was performing. José Ramos' story cannot be told without his accomplice. He mingled and tangled with Catarina Palse. Yes, Catarina Palse. Born in Transylvania, absolutely, that Transylvania, to a poor German family in Hungary. And if you think her life was already a gothic horror story, buckle up. At age 12, during the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, Russian soldiers invaded her village. They raped her. They murdered her entire family, parents, brothers, while she watched. At 15, she married Peter Palse just to escape, but during their voyage to Brazil, Peter hanged himself. Catarina arrived in Porto Alegre in 1857, alone, traumatized, 20 years old. And in 1863, she met José Ramos at the theater. Here's where criminal psychology gets dark. Catarina wasn't just a victim turned accomplice. She was a weapon. Trauma had fractured her ability to trust, to connect, to empathize. José didn't just seduce her, he gave her purpose in the chaos. A warped attachment born from survival instinct. She spoke German, she was beautiful, and she knew how to make men feel safe. Until they weren't. Evil got a gigantic empire as soon as José Ramos' path met with Carlos Claussner, the reluctant butcher. Carlos Claussner was a German immigrant who opened his butcher shop in 1859 behind the Nossa Senhora dos Dores church. Business was good. Location was perfect. But Carlos was lonely. When he met José, who spoke fluent German, they became fast friends. José became his apprentice. Carlos trusted him. Big mistake. Carlos was no psychopath. He was opportunistic, greedy, and willing to believe that if you processed human remains into sausage, mixed it with beef, and sold it with a smile, nobody would ever know. He was the normalizer, the one who made horror mundane. And when the bodies started piling up, Carlos suggested the unthinkable. If this story shook you, hit that subscribe button. We're diving into the darkest corners of true crime history every week. Cases you've never heard of, told the way they deserve to be told. Drop a comment. Would you have trusted José Ramos if you met him at the theater? When the bodies started piling up, Carlos suggested, turn them into sausages. The method was chillingly simple. José and Catarina would scout victims at public gatherings, places the elite frequented. They looked for German immigrants, wealthy travelers, people passing through, people nobody would miss immediately. Catarina was the lure. She'd approach them, speak German, flirt, whisper promises. Come to my home, my husband won't be there for a while. The victims would follow her to the house on Rua do Arvoredo, number 79, to be exact. She'd make love to them, serve them a lavish supper. And then José would step out of the shadows with a hatchet and cave in their skulls. If they survived the first blow, and some did, he'd slit their throats, methodically, no rage, just precision. Then came the trapdoor, a hidden chute leading to a secret room in the basement. Bodies dropped through, stripped of clothes, jewelry, money, decapitated, dismembered, butchered like livestock. The bones, dissolved in acid or burned in the butcher shop furnace, ashes dumped in the Guaíba River. The meat ground, seasoned, stuffed into casing, mixed with beef. And here's the sick twist. The night before they sold the sausages, Catarina would fry up a batch for dinner. José, Catarina, and Carlos would taste test their product. The next day, the special sausages hit the market. People loved them, lines around the block. The bishop ordered them. The police chief ordered them. Wealthy merchants placed advance orders. Customers complained when they ran out, calling them the most flavorful sausages in town. Nobody asked why. Greed began to turn inwards from August 1863. The disappearances were getting noticed. Whispers turned to panic. The authorities started asking questions. Carlos Claussner, the butcher, started getting nervous. Customers kept commenting on the odd taste of the sausage, even as they praised it. He wanted out. He told José he was leaving for Uruguay. José couldn't allow that. Early September 1863, José murdered Carlos Claussner. Buried him in the backyard, fully clothed, intact. Then José and Catarina took over the butcher shop, claiming Carlos had sold it to them and left town. But neither José nor Catarina knew how to make sausages properly. The business collapsed. And that's when their world started closing in. April 15, 1864. A Portuguese merchant named Januário Martins Ramos de Silva and his 14-year-old assistant, José Ignacio de Souza Avila, were last seen entering José Ramos' house. They never came out. The authorities interrogated José. His story didn't add up. He claimed they left for the countryside. Police Chief Dario Rafael Calado, ironically, José's former handler when he was a police informant, obtained a search warrant. April 18, 1864. Police descended on Rua do Arvoredo, number 79. In the basement, the decomposing, skeletal remains of Carlos Claussner, still dressed, identified by a distinctive earring and a facial deformity from a previous surgery. In the backyard well, 2 more bodies, mutilated, Januario Martins and young José Ignacio. Inside the house, personal belongings of missing men, clothes, jewelry, evidence of at least 6 to 9 confirmed victims, though the real number may never be known. Catarina broke. Under pressure she confessed, told them everything. The luring, the murders, the sausages. José, he said nothing, denied everything, claimed innocence. Let's talk about what made José Ramos tick. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't mental illness in the clinical sense. This was predatory narcissism combined with sadistic control. José killed his father as a boy and discovered he liked it. He tried to behead a prisoner and felt powerful. He murdered for profit, sure, but he also murdered because it made him feel godlike. The ritual, the bathing, the cologne, the theater, that was his way of compartmentalizing, of separating José the cultured gentleman from José the butcher. He wasn't haunted, he was performing. Catarina's psychology is more tragic. Severe childhood trauma, loss of family, rape. She latched onto José because he gave her structure in a chaotic world. She became his weapon because psychologically she'd already been broken by the time they met. Codependence, trauma bonding, survival. Carlos Claussner, classic moral disengagement. If I process it into sausages, it's not really murder anymore, right? He convinced himself he was just a businessman, just following instructions, until his conscience caught up and José silenced him permanently. August 1864, the trial. José Ramos was convicted of robbery and murder, sentenced to death by hanging. The sentence was later commuted to life imprisonment. Catarina Palse was sentenced to 13 years and 4 months of hard labor as an accomplice. But here's the kicker. José denied the crimes until his death in 1893 at the Santa Casa de Misericordia Hospital, still incarcerated, still defiant. Catarina was released in 1880, then rearrested for unknown reasons, and finally freed in May 1891 at age 54. She disappeared into the streets of Porto Alegre. No one knows what happened to her. Carlos Claussner, already dead, victim of the very scheme he helped create. And the sausages. The evidence was rendered unfeasible in the course of the trial. Translation: they couldn't prove the human meat angle in court. But the public knew. The rumors spread like wildfire. Internationally, the case exploded, covered in France, Uruguay, even prompting Charles Darwin to write in his notebook, "Is there a jackal asleep in each man?" Porto Alegre's local press. They buried it. Why? Because admitting the city's elite had unknowingly become cannibals was too humiliating to bear. Let's pause. Because this story, dark, twisted, viral as hell, often forgets the people who actually mattered. The German immigrants who came to Porto Alegre looking for a better life and found a butcher's block instead. Januario Martins, a merchant with a family. 14-year-old José Ignacio, a boy who just wanted to work and survive. Carlos Claussner, who made the worst choice of his life and paid with his own. These weren't props in a horror story, they were people. And the lesson: evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a charming man in expensive cologne who recites poetry at the theater. Sometimes it's a beautiful woman who speaks your language and makes you feel safe. And sometimes it's the friendly butcher who always has a smile and a special sausage just for you. Today, Rua do Arvoredo is called Rua Coronel Fernando Machado. The street has been renamed, the buildings renovated, the cobblestones smoothed over. But if you walk that street at night, locals say you can still feel it. The weight of the silence, the ghosts of the forgotten. Because history remembers the bodies, but the street remembers the silence. And in Porto Alegre, they'll never forget the butcher who smiled while the city ate itself alive. And remember, evil doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it just asks you to dinner.
In the darkness, whispers become screams, secrets become weapons, and the truth becomes deadly. This is True Crime Mysteries, The Shadow Lens. Every week, we uncover the stories they don't want you to know, disappearances, cold cases, and the mysteries hiding in plain sight. Subscribe now, and step into the shadows with us.